Hello everyone, how are you? Welcome to our webinar. We are very excited. Today is our first webinar that we are going to be talking in English. Let's wait a little time for everybody to join us. We just sent the final reminder for everyone. So before we start telling you all options Canadians have to come live in the United States, I'm going to talk to you about who we are. We are Galler Law Firm. Galler Law Firm, it's an immigration law firm. Immigration, if we say immigration, there are a lot of options, but we are focused in business immigration. So what is business immigration? It's basically we help everyone that wants to come to the United States. Maybe they want to get an investor visa, a working visa, a professional visa. So today we're going to explain all options. Before that, I want to introduce to everyone Diego Galler. Diego Galler is the immigration attorney of our firm. He's also our founder. So Diego, if you want to talk to everyone here that already joined us and tell us a little more about who you are and your experience.
Thank you, Joana. Thank you, everyone. Welcome to this seminar, to this live event that we have today, especially for you. We are going to talk today about options for Canadians, and we are very happy and excited to do this today. So as Joana mentioned, I'm the founder of Galler Law Firm. This law firm started in 2011. I'm an attorney originally from Argentina. After becoming an attorney in Argentina, I moved and I lived in Mexico for 5 years. And then from Mexico, I came to the US, again going north, almost 20 years ago, like 19 years ago. So it's been a lot of time, a long time since I arrived to the US. And I started myself as an immigrant. As a student, I came here to take the master's degree in law in Georgetown University. And then I worked in Washington, D.C. After that, I moved to Houston, where I started my career path in immigration. And I worked in a law firm doing business immigration. Business immigration basically means we help investors, entrepreneurs, we help athletes, we help artists, people with extraordinary abilities, employees, U.S. companies that want to bring people from abroad to the U.S. So for the last 13 years now in this office, more than 16 years of experience doing this, or 17 years doing this, for a long time, we helped more than 7,000 people come to the US with different strategies. And the idea today is to give you a little bit of information. This is like education, is different ways to explore paths to come to the US. So we will talk a little bit about options that we have for Canadians from our standpoint, like business visa and corporate immigration. Give you these options for you to evaluate. So that's more or less, I always joke because I'm from Argentina, going to Mexico and then to the US, and I always say I'm going to end my career in Canada. So today we are doing this seminar for Canadians, which is really nice.
Yeah, you started, Diego, like going up from Argentina to Mexico to United States. That's funny. Okay, so first of all, Diego, before we start talking about all options, I want to tell everyone that our chat is open. So if you have any question, please drop it there. And during this seminar, we will be more than happy to answer. Diego, there are so many options that I want to share with our viewers today. So please try to be fast with those explanations so we can have enough time to answer all questions we have. Because I already have a list of questions that people already asked in our social media, Instagram, Facebook. That, by the way, I'm gonna leave here all our social media information so you can find us there. So Diego, I think we should start with the E2 visa, the investor visa, which is one of my favorite options. So can you explain everyone what is that E2 visa about?
Perfect. So you guide me, John, okay? So I'm going to start talking about the E2, and then if people have questions, just let me know, and we will go through the questions about the E2 visa.
Perfect.
Okay, so The E2 visa is a non-immigrant visa. We will talk today about two different groups of visas, ones that are the non-immigrant or the immigrant. The immigrant is the green card. So basically, these are different programs that the US has in order to become a permanent resident in the US. And the non-immigrant are visas that have a specific purpose, a specific objective that are used to come to the US in a shorter period of time. So, for example, we can get an E2 visa in a couple of months compared to a green card that may take 1 year, 2 years, or 3 years to get. Among all the non-immigrant visas, you know already, of course, the tourist visa and the E2, the investor's visa, on the investment visa, is one type of program that was created by the US Congress that is directed or targeting people that have citizenship from a country that has a treaty between the US and that country. So that's the first important requirement. And I want to emphasize that because it's not necessary for a person to be born in that country, but to have the citizenship of that country. So, for example, we have Canadian clients who were originally born, I don't know, in India or in Venezuela or in other countries, and then they become Canadians. And by becoming Canadians, they are now eligible through that citizenship to apply for the investment visa. So basically, the investment visa is a visa that requires a person to create a company in the US, to invest a substantial amount of money that was legally obtained. That money or those funds should be invested at risk in the US company. That company should have operations or be very close to open operations or to have start operations in the US. And then we request the US government to provide our clients a visa so they can come and manage the business in the US. So that's like a brief statement of what the E2 visa is. So let's go very fast, as Joana told me, through those requirements. So we talk about the citizenship. Substantial amount of money means the funds that we need to start the business, startup costs. Okay, so anything that we need to open that business, the funds that we require to open that company are the substantial amount of money. And we usually recommend at least $100,000 or more, but there are certain exceptions in which we were able to obtain the visa for less than that. And those are basically one-on-one conversations that we have to have in the future. So a substantial investment legally obtained means that we have to demonstrate to the government that the funds that are going to be invested are not coming from criminal activity. Then the investment should be at risk. That means that we need to use that money, okay, to invest, to purchase inventory, equipment, etc. So it's not sufficient to have the funds in a bank account in the US. So we need to use that money. And then we need to start operations. And the important thing about the E2 visa is think about an active company, okay? So any business that is related to, for example, any passive type of investments are not useful for the E2 visa. So, for example, I don't know, I have an apartment. I spent, I don't know, $500,000 in an apartment in Miami, and I want to rent that apartment. That is a passive type of investment, and that will not qualify for the E2 visa. For E2 visa, you need to think about having employees, having subcontractors, invoicing, having sales, like activities that will show that the company is real and is operating. So those are the basic requirements for the E2 visa.
Perfect, Diego. Before moving to the other visa, I think this is a good question. Can the investor bring his family with him with this visa?
Yes. So the E2 visa, with the E2 visa, you can have, for example, one person investing, and the spouse will be able to get the same visa, the E2. The spouse, the dependent spouse, will be able to work, obtain a working permit or work authorization to work in the US, can work for the family company, can create his or her own company, or work for another employer, no problem at all. And then also this includes kids or children under 21 who are single, can come to the US. They will not be able to work, but they will be able to attend school, either private or public school. So that's allowed with the E2 visa. So with one visa, one investment, one business, you bring the entire family. The entire family means spouses and kids, okay? Because I already, many times I receive questions about my mother and my siblings and my nephews and my nieces. For those, we need to create a different strategy, okay?
Perfect. So now I think we should talk about E1 visa, the import and export visa. I always joke they are sisters but not twins because they give the same benefits, but to qualify, they have different requirements. So can you explain a little about the E1 visa?
Perfect. So the E1 visa has the same benefits in terms of family that you can bring to the US. So that's the same thing. But the concept is completely different. So in the investment visa, we need to invest money or um, provide inventory or equipment to the company as initial investment. The E1 is import export visa. That means that we need to create a company in the US. So the person who is coming with an E1 needs to start operations in the company, and basically 50% of the operations of the US company has to be related to imports and exports between the US and Canada. Okay. So, and I'm doing this emphasis in Canada because if I have a person with dual citizenship, let's say, I don't know, a person from India who became Canadian, so the imports and exports should be between the US and Canada, not between the US and India. Okay, so that's very important. And then the good thing about this type of visa is that allows not only products but also services to be imported or exported. So I don't know. For example, let's give some examples about our clients. So for example, I have a company that is exporting auto parts from the US to other countries, to home country, or is importing, I don't know, a Mexican client who is importing tequila from Mexico to the US. But we can also import or export services. So if we create a company, I don't know, a company that sells software in the US, then I can have a person creating that software in Canada, and from the US I am importing a service from Canada to the US. Or I can offer consulting services. I'm an engineer and I want to offer consulting services from the US to Canadian companies. So then I can export a service to Canada. And the regulations require only 50%. Okay. So 50% of operations. That means that the other 50% could be like in the local market in the US or to other countries. Let's say the same example as consulting services. I can provide 50% of consulting services to Canada, to Canadian clients, or I can offer 50%. I'm sorry, and the other 50%, those could be consulting services in the US or to India or to countries in Europe, anywhere. It doesn't matter. But it's important to keep in mind, to bear in mind that we need to keep at least 50% of operations between the US and Canada, and that will be evaluated by the government constantly. Okay. So that's basically what the E1 is about, and the government the same requires the company to already have started operations. So in the investment visa, you have to invest money, use the money, and start operations. In the import export, you don't have to invest money at the beginning, so it's not necessary investment or to put any funds in the US company, but you need to constantly be doing these imports and exports between US and Canada.
Perfect. So, Diego, like the good part of these visas is that they don't need sponsors. Like the person can put their business and they can do their own visa. But now I want to talk a little about the TN visa because we have a lot of questions in the chat about professionals that they have job offers to see if they have like an easy option for them to come work for an employer in the United States. So can you explain the TN visa?
Perfect. So yes, as you mentioned, the E1 and the E2 are for entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs means any person who wants to create a company in the US, and it doesn't matter if that person has a company in Canada or in another country, or the person was an entrepreneur before. As long as you can demonstrate that you can become an entrepreneur, you can really manage the company in the US, it's okay. Whereas the TN visa is a working visa. And as I mentioned at the beginning, there are many non-immigrant visas in the US. There is a list literally from A to Z. So you have the A visa, the B, the C, the D visa. So we were talking about the E1, the E2, but there is one that is called the TN visa. And the TN visa is a specific visa that was created by the treaty between the US, Mexico, and Canada. And in that visa is basically to get a job and to get the visa for purposes of a job offer that a person can get from a US company, basically. I mean, there are certain situations in which a Canadian company can also make the job offer, but basically it's a US company sponsoring an employee to come to the US. So there are certain characteristics of the TN visa. The first one is only for Canadians and Mexicans, which is great for Canadians. Thousands of Canadian people came to the US under the TN visa. There is no time frame when to apply. There is another visa, which is the H-1B, which requires to apply at a certain point in time during the year. The TN visa, we can apply any time during the year. There are no limitations in terms of numbers of visas available. In the H-1B, we have 65,000 plus 20,000 for people who are a master's degree in the US. The TN, there are no cap, no limits. I mean, there are no limits in number of visas that can be issued. For Canadians, it's even easier than for Mexicans because you can even apply at the US border, at the border between the US and Canada, and apply with CBP directly at the border. I mean, you don't have to go necessarily to a US consulate in Canada to apply for the visa. So that's another good thing for Canadians. And the specific thing about the TN visa is that there is a list of professions that is authorized for the TN visa. And it's not any type of job. It's for professional employees. So doctors, accountants, engineers, attorneys, designers, architects. I mean, there are different type of positions in the TN list, and you have to fit in one of those professions, and then the company needs to sponsor you one of those professions in order to get a TN. But the TN is good because, I mean, it doesn't have all these limitations that I was explaining before. It's cheap compared to other type of visas. And the same, it allows family members to come to the US. So the spouse can come to the US, the children unmarried or single under 21 can come as well. In this case, compared to the e-visa, the dependent of the TN, the spouse cannot work, okay? In the E1 and the E2, they can work. With the TN, unfortunately, the spouse cannot work. So that's one of the limitations of the TN visa, but it's easy to get, it's fast, and a person can come to the US really, really, really quick to start working for a company. So there is one recommendation. I always get this question, which is, can I create a company and sponsor myself in the TN visa? And the answer is no. I cannot create a company and sponsor myself as an employee because I cannot have both conditions, being an employer and an employee at the same time. However, if I have, I don't know, a family member, not the spouse, but for example, I had many cases in which, for example, the father has 70-80% of the company, the son has 20%, and then the father wants to hire the son. We were successfully doing those type of visas because having a 20% of the company or 20% ownership means that whoever has 80 can fire you from that position. Of course, you will keep your 20% shares in the company, but the person who has 80 has power and control over you and over your work as an employee. So from that perspective, it can work, but you cannot create a company and you cannot sponsor yourself to come as a TN. Okay? That's basically what the TN is about.
Thank you, Diego. There are a lot of comments, people asking like, oh, is that the only working visa? There are more working visas, but I believe for Canadians and Mexicans, this is the best working visa because they can apply any time of the year. They have enough visas for everyone that wants one. So I truly believe like TN is an excellent options for Canadians. So Diego, now I want to move to L1 visa.
Wait,
Ah, yeah.
before we move to the L, I want to clarify something because you are now just mentioning about more options for employees. And there was one part from the E1 and E2 that it's important to clarify. The E1 and the E2, let's use the E2. For both it's the same, but let's use the E2. We have the main investor, okay? So a person that is investing $200,000 in a company in the US. And that person wants to get the E2 visa. The good thing about the E2 is that you can also bring employees from the same citizenship. So if you are a Canadian investor, you invest, you create your company, you get the E2 visa, and you want to bring a manager or an essential employee to the company, so you can bring under the E2 another person as an employee, and that employee can also bring the spouse and the children. Okay, it's the same benefits that the employee has, and the employee doesn't have to invest a penny in the US company. So that's important. But even more important, or another example, is you can have the Canadian investor, okay, invest in the US company. The Canadian investor can stay in Canada, no, and that person doesn't get an E2 visa, doesn't is not interested in getting an E2 visa, but then can sponsor an employee to come to the US in a managerial role or an essential role. And the important thing is that managerial or essential roles or employment positions are different from the TN. In the TN, we need basically a bachelor's degree, okay, or certain level of experience. Here, under the E2 or the E1, we don't need a bachelor's degree. It's not for professional positions. It's our essential, our managerial or executive positions. So that's very important because a person without education can come as a manager and get the E2 even without the investor investing in the US company, getting the E2 visa.
Thank you, Diego. Before moving to L1, we just got two questions about TN, and I think it's good if you answer them. The first one is how big the company should be to sponsor for a TN visa.
There is no limit in the regulation regarding the size of the company. So any size, it's okay. The only problem, it's not in the regulation, but it's like a practical question, which is if the person doesn't have any employees, will the TN employee really come to perform the duties for that specific profession? So if I create an accounting and I don't know, any type of entity in the US, and I bring a person as an accountant, and there are no employees, can we really say that the person is going to be doing only or performing duties only related to accounting? If it doesn't, if yes, perfect. But if the person is coming to do sales, to do management, and to do other tasks, to perform other tasks that are not related to accounting, for example, then the answer is no. So the good thing is there are no regulations regarding the size, and it's important to have this individual consultation to understand what the company is doing and if it really can bring a person for that position. And we offer certain free initial consultations or exploratory conversations. So if you go to our website, www.gallerlawfirm.com, you can get a 15-minute consultation with a team member from our team and explore these things a little bit deeper. Okay, so that's an option if you want to clarify that. So that's the first question. What's the second one?
The second question is what happens if the profession isn't listed in the list, but the person has a profession but it's not in that list. Can they apply for a TN or not?
Well, again, we need to make an individual evaluation because some people may not. I mean, there are some professions. Let's put it this way: there are some professions in the list that do not require a specific bachelor's in a specific industry. So, for example, let me give you an example. Accountants need a bachelor's in accounting. But for example, there is a position that it's called management consultant. It's a person who comes to the US to explain and to work with the management on how to improve processes and procedures and operations. So there is no specific type of bachelor's degree for that position of management consultant. So if the person that is coming to the US fits the management consultant position, it doesn't matter what type of bachelor has, as long as it relates to the industry of the company. So, for example, I don't know, in the past, we brought people with bachelors in culinary arts who took cases in restaurant management or hotel management, and they were brought by, I don't know, restaurant chains in order to help the company on how to improve certain things. And the bachelor was in culinary arts. So as long as it's related to the industry, it's okay. So we need to evaluate case by case. There may be certain cases in which it's possible, and there may be certain cases probably that it's not. And we need to explore because the list is long. So if it's a profession, the likelihood of having that in the list is high.
Perfect. We're receiving more questions, but I think we should move forward with the other visas and at the end we can answer them. But before moving to the L1, I just want to remind everyone that you can find us in all social media. We're Gallery Law Firm. And what you said, Diego, is very important. We offer a free consultation. You go to our website, www.gallerylawfirm.com. It's completely in English. So you can go, you can schedule your appointment, and we will be more than happy to talk with you to determine what you need and to give you the best immigration strategy for you to achieve that dream. So Diego, finally, can we talk about L1?
Of course. The L1 is a visa that it's not specific for Canadians. In fact, this is a visa that can be used by any person in any country. And basically, the L1 is an intra-company transferee. What it means is that you create a company in the US and you have a company, let's say in Canada, and in Canada that company has employees and your role in that company is as an executive or a manager. You could be the owner of the company or not, okay? But your position is an executive position in the company, let's say the CEO, the COO of the company. So you are really managing people in Canada, and then you create a company, and the company in Canada transfers you to the company in the US so you can have, again, a managerial or an executive position in the US to develop the company. So if the company is new, the government will give you 1 year to set up the company, but at the end of that year, you need to have sufficient structure in terms of employees to be able to sustain an executive position. So that means that if after 1 year you don't have employees or you have only one or two, the US will assume that you are answering the phone, signing the contracts, doing sales, cleaning the company. I mean, doing tasks that are not necessarily executive or managerial in nature. So that's the first requirement. So the company, the position should be executive or managerial. The other requirement is that you should have performed that position in Canada, for example, for at least 1 year during the last 3 years. That's another requirement. Another requirement is that both companies should be part of the same group. That means that both companies should either be affiliates, in which affiliate means that those are sisters. So one company is owned by one person, 51%, for example, or by another entity, 51%, and this person or this entity is also the owner of the company in the US, at least 51%. And then you can have like a parent company and a subsidiary company in the US, so in which, for example, the Canadian company owns at least 51% or more of the US company. So you have a parent-subsidiary relationship. There are different type of relationships in the regulation, but these two are the most important ones. So this type of visa doesn't require an initial investment, but it requires for you to show that you have sufficient funds or sufficient assets in order to support the position the first year of operations in the US. The L1 is a good path to the green card. We will talk about two options for the green card in a little bit, but this is one because there is a green card process that is very similar to the L1. So if the company in the US has been already operating for 1 year, sufficient employees, financial ability to pay a salary, and is financially stable, then we can request the green card as well for the same beneficiary. And it's the same as the E1 and the E2 in terms of the family that can come to the US. So you can have a spouse coming and working in the US. With the L1, the spouse can work in the US. And then children under 21 can come to the US and study without any issues. So that's basically the L1A. There is another one, another L1, which is called the L1B, which is more specifically an employee visa. And that's for employees who have specialized knowledge. So let's say that we have a company in Canada that is developing certain software, and a couple of people who are the responsible for the development of that software are transferred to the US because they have the specific knowledge about a specific software and are coming to the US to adapt the software to the market in the US. So that's okay. That's the L1B. So for there, you don't have to be an executive, you don't have to be a manager, but you have to have the specialized knowledge that you're bringing to the US to be able to operate certain parts of the company. So that's basically the L1 and the L1A and the L1B. The last requirement is you have to have in the US the premises already. So where the workers are going to work. So you need to have the office space, the warehouse space, whatever space you need to accommodate the employees. And you have to have a projection, a business plan to show to the government how you are going to hire these people and how your business is going to evolve in the next years.
Perfect, Diego. We have some questions regarding how many employees should the company have in Canada, and then how many employees the company should have in the United States in order to qualify for an L1.
So again, there is nothing in the regulation regarding number of employees. It depends on the business model. There are some companies that require more employees than others. My recommendation for small companies, it's to have at least a minimum of 6, but that's my personal experience with companies, because whenever you have to show at the end of the year that you have a structure that will support an executive position, what I explain my clients is that you need to think of an organizational chart of at least 3 levels. You can have more levels, up, but down you have to have at least 3 levels, which is first the executive or the manager, then a second level of other managerial, supervisory, or professional employees, and then at the bottom the people who operate day-to-day the company. So any employee who is doing the day-to-day tasks, those are at the bottom. So it's always recommended to have at least 2 managers or professional employees in the middle, and at least 2-3 employees under each manager. So that will show a structure that it's sufficient and it's enough to support that type of executive position. But that is not carved in stone. We have cases that require more employees, and it depends on the business model. So we always recommend anything at least minimum between 6 to 10 employees after the first year of operations. But that's not a specific legal advice. So that's the experience that we are having with the cases that we handle. And it requires an individual evaluation of the situation to make sure that that type of company with 6-10 employees, it's good to function, to work, and to efficiently operate in the US.
Perfect, Diego. Thank you for that answer. And I think that's very important to clarify. Immigration is very personalized. Like everybody has a different case, a different situation. So it's very hard to give a general answer for everyone. That's why we are offering a free consultation. You can go to our webpage, and we will be more than happy to talk with you to understand what you need and to help you. So, Diego, we already talked about those known immigrant options that can bring people to live temporarily in the United States. So, what do you think if we now move to immigration options? Because we have a lot of questions regarding how can they get their green card. So, I think we should start with the EB5. Can you explain a little what is the EB5 program and what is that like investment green card?
Perfect. So before we go into the specifics about the EB5, what I would like to clarify is that you can get the green card in two different ways. One is by already being in the US with a non-immigrant visa or non-immigrant status or a non-immigrant classification. So, for example, you can be in the US with the E2 visa, the investment visa, and then you can apply for the EB5 while you are in the US. Or you can be in your home country, apply for a green card from your home country, and come to the US directly with a green card. The main difference between a non-immigrant visa and an immigrant visa is the time that it takes to get it. So non-immigrant visas take less time. A green card process can take 1, 2, 3, or more years until you get the green card. So if you are thinking on, okay, I can stay in Canada for 2, 3 more years, I'm not in a hurry, but I would like to go to the US directly with a green card. There are more than 70 different ways to get the green card. So we are talking today about 2 or 3. So we talked already about the green card through the L1A, which is the intra-company transferee. And we did it, and I basically explained the L1, but the green card is very similar to the L1 with the difference that I mentioned. So there is another program that is called the EB5. EB means employment base, and 5 is one of the categories. And this is an investment type of green card. So we have the two sisters as well. So we have the E2, which is the non-immigrant investment visa. And then we have the EB5, which is the immigrant visa. And there are a lot of differences. So in the EB5 program, the amount that we need to invest is much higher. We need to invest $1,050,000 in a company in the US, or we can invest 800,000 if the company is in a TEA. TEA means a targeted employment area, which is a high unemployment area, or is a rural area. So we can invest less and invest $800,000. So that's one. Then the second is, where do we invest? We invest either in our own company or in a regional center. So you, as an investor, you can create your own company. And this is a job creation program. That means that it's not just investing the money, but you have to create 10 positions for full-time employees who are US citizens or permanent residents in the US. So you need to create 10 full-time employments in the US. So that's basically, you bring the money, you create the employment, and then you get the green card. That's basically the whole concept of the EB5. So you can invest in your own company. Let's say you create, I don't know, a restaurant or a pharmaceutical company, an engineering company, whatever you want to create. And then you also are able to bring those employees. You have like 2 years to bring those employees on board, and the government will give you the green card. The green card is a conditional green card. That means that, as I mentioned, once you reach the point in which you get the green card, the government gives you the green card for 2 years. And then you have to demonstrate after those 2 years, basically, that you made the investment was at risk, the investment, the funds that you invested were legally obtained, and that you created the 10 positions in the US. So the EB5 also has a different program, as I mentioned, is the regional centers. And the regional centers are basically private entities that are authorized by the government to file a petition on behalf of the investors. And basically what they do is, those are pool investments. So they bring together 30, 40, 50 investors, I don't know, for example, to build a hotel in Miami. And then you are part of those group of investors. You invest the amount, and then you have certain active roles, but the main regional center is in charge of developing the business and getting the employees. And the good thing is that they don't only count direct employees, but they also count direct and induced. That means that all indirect employees that are created by the business also count, and they have to show certain economic models, which is much easier to show sometimes than doing your own investment in your own company. So for some people who want to have like a more active type of business and invest in their own company, they will do the EB5 and invest, for example, 1,050,000 in their own business. But for people who are interested in sometimes investing less, regional centers usually have projects for 800,000. And if you want to have like a less active type of role in the company, you can also invest in these regional centers. They don't guarantee the return of the money, so it's very important to do the due diligence and to understand that the regional center is a very good regional center that is capable of returning you the money at the end of the period whenever you obtain the green card and the removal of conditions. So this is a process that is divided into 3 steps. In the first one, you have to demonstrate that you are investing in a company that can create the 10 positions and that the money that you are investing was legally obtained. That sounds very easy, is the most complex part of the application. Then you apply for a green card, either in the US or abroad, at the US consulate abroad. The green card is valid for 2 years. Condition to show, as I mentioned, that you got the employees, or the regional center got the employees, direct, indirect employees, and then the government removes the conditions and gives you the full green card. After being 5 years with a green card, starting from the first green card, you can apply for citizenship. And then whenever you become a citizen, then you can bring your parents, you can bring siblings and other family members. So it's a path to get citizenship if you're interested in the citizenship of the US, and you start with a green card through investment. And you have to demonstrate, as I mentioned, how you obtain the funds to invest, and you can do that with, I don't know, your earnings from your own company, salary, if you get a gift from your parents and someone in the family gives you the money to invest. So that's feasible. And there are different ways to show the source of funds in the EB5. So we can discuss that in a consultation if that's something that is interesting for you.
We got a specific question, and is that if the person can ask for a loan and that money use it for an EB5.
The answer is yes. If the loan comes from a bank, it's really easy because banks already show that the funds that they are providing are from a legal source, so it's not necessary to prove anything else. But if the loan is coming from a person, like, I don't know, a friend or a family member, we need to show how that person got the money that you are using to invest. So the answer is yes, you can get a loan. We had a lot of cases with loans, but we need to do the due diligence in order to show that the person can provide you the documentation showing that that person obtained those funds legally. If that's the case, no problem at all. And then, yes, you can use a loan as part of the EB5.
Perfect. Thank you for the answer. Now I think we should talk about the EB2, the National Investor Visa. It's very popular these days. This is also not an option only for Canadians. It's for any nationality, but Canadians have these options. So I think it's a good idea if we explain this. So can you tell us a little more about the EB2 National Interest Waiver option?
Of course. So this is a very good process for Canadians and from people all around the world, in which you are basically self-sponsoring you. So you sponsor yourself to get a green card, and you are telling the government 4 things. The first one is, this is called the EB2 because it's in a category that it's called advanced degrees. That means that you have a master's degree, a PhD, or at least a 4-year bachelor's plus 5 years of progressive experience after you got your bachelor's. So that will pre-qualify you for the EB2 National Interest Waiver. After you show that you have the advanced degree, the next thing you need to show is that you are gonna implement a project, that you have an endeavor, a project in the US that will be of national interest in a substantial merit industry. So that means that you are creating a project that will benefit the whole US, Okay, and that project it's in an area that is of substantial merit. That means it's an area or in an industry that is important for the government. So that's the first part of the process. In the second part of the process, you have to demonstrate, not the process, of the second part of the petition, let's say, you have to demonstrate that you are well positioned to advance that endeavor, that you can really, because of your experience, education, success, patents, interest from investors, interest from potential clients, etc., you can really move forward with that endeavor and make it real and be successful. And then in the last part of the petition, you have to demonstrate that you getting the green card will not affect a potential U.S. worker in the U.S., which is the easiest part here in this petition. So um, it's very good because now thousands of people are getting the green card demonstrating this project. You don't have to already have that project in the US. It's basically you are showing the government your idea, what you want to do, and they will tell you, yes, with this project you can get the green card. And then people get it. So, for example, I don't know, if you're a scientist that you are doing certain research in cancer, you are an oil and gas, a petroleum engineer who are developing, I don't know, a part that will be very important. I don't know, a valve that it's gonna help avoid spills in the oil industry. If you are an entrepreneur who are creating a company that will build houses with pieces like Lego. If you are an entrepreneur with a food company who is developing, I don't know, I had a case, it was a sugar free chocolate for diabetic people, so improving health. You are a person who's going to give consultancy on how to improve processes in companies to make them environmentally friendly. I mean, sky is the limit, okay? But it's very important to show it's not that difficult to create that project, but it's important to show that you are well positioned, that your bachelor's or your education is related to that project. So this is a type of process that has been used for thousands of people to get the green card and come to the US. So Canadians can get the green card sooner than other countries. And for the green card, it's very different than non-immigrant visas. Okay, so for the green card, you are being evaluated by your country of birth. So if you are, let's say, a person from India who got a Canadian citizenship for green card purposes and for visa bulletin, which is how long it will take my case until I get the green card, you will be evaluated as Indian. But if you were born in Canada, you will be evaluated and put into the virtual line for Canadians, which is shorter than people from India or China or Mexico or Philippines. So for that is different, and we need to evaluate the specific case to analyze eligibility. But basically, the EB2, the National Interest Waiver, is a case that it's very popular nowadays. Not many people know about it. I mean, it's popular from the standpoint that more and more people are using it, but it still needs to be publicized because many people who are eligible don't know about it. So these seminars are very important to spread the information, and people who thought that are not eligible, at the end they are. So for that specific process, if you are interested, you can send us your resume. We have a specific email address, which is cv@galalawfirm.com. It's going to appear now in a minute. And you can send us your resume. We can evaluate your eligibility. And if we believe that you are eligible, that you have the profile to potentially get the green card, we will let you know, have a consultation, and then move forward with the case.
Perfect, Diego. Now I'm gonna start asking you questions that we got, and everyone, please feel free to ask all the questions you have in the chat. So the first question is regarding the E2 and the E1 visa, and it's, does the company to be operating before we get these type of visas?
Yes. So for the E2 and E1 regulations requiring for a company to be either already in operations or very close to start operations. So, for example, I don't know if you are investing in a restaurant and you already purchased the equipment, the furniture, you are doing the remodeling of the place, you already secured the space. So then, yes, you didn't open the doors, you are not having customers already eating in your restaurant, but you are very, very close to opening. So that's okay. But just having the money in the bank account and saying, this is my project, it's not sufficient for either the E1 or the E2.
Perfect. The second question is regarding the EB2 visa, and it's how long does it take the complete process?
Well, the process has two different steps. In the first one is it's called the I-140, the alien petition, in which we have to show the immigrant petition, in which in that immigrant petition we need to show everything that I told you. That's the most difficult part. So once that's approved, the government will put you in a virtual line, and that line will depend on your country of birth. So if you are from India, it can take more than 10 years. If you are from Canada, it can take you 1 or 2 years. So it depends on your country of birth. And the visa bulletin at certain point is the process, which is the visa bulletin shows you how many visas are available, how many green cards are available every month. And that's determined by the Department of State. So we need to check every month, but it will depend how long to get the green card. It depends of the country of origin. So we need to understand where you are from, where you were born, and from that we can tell you exactly, more or less, not exactly, but more or less, how long it will take the whole process until you get the green card.
Perfect. The next question is regarding the TN visa, and they're asking if it can be renewed. If a person can be like for 20, 30 years in the United States working with a TN visa.
From the legal perspective, the answer is yes. From the practical perspective, the answer is no. What it means is, so yes, there is no limit in the regulation. For example, the H-1B, you can be in the US using the H-1B basically for 6 years with some exceptions. With the TN, there are no limits. So technically, yes, you can get the TN visa and then apply and reapply and renew and renew. And yes, it's true, they're having people in the US with a TN for 10 years or more. At certain point, if you're applying at the at the US border, if you're a Canadian, the person can deny the TN based on the number of years because they may suspect that you are really living in the US and you want to stay permanently, and the TN doesn't have that dual intent. So as long as you can convince the officer that you are temporarily in the US, at a certain point you are going back, I mean, you can renew or extend the TN without any limitations.
The next question is regarding the E2 visa, and they're asking what's the investment amount that you suggest to qualify for this type of visa.
I mean, there is no set amount, and there are many variables to understand the amount. So, a construction company, if you're gonna, I don't know, build houses, and you want to do it with $100,000 or $200,000, probably it's not sufficient. You will need probably 300, half a million, or $1 million. If you're creating a manufacturing company, you may need a higher investment. If you're gonna purchase a franchise for, I don't know, haircuts for kids, probably with $100,000 is more than enough. So it will depend on the business. We don't recommend investments lower than 100,000. At certain cases, yes, it's possible to do it even with lower amounts. It depends on the business model. So we need to have a discussion about what type of business you want to do in the US. And based on that business and the needs of the business, it can be determined what the amount would be.
Perfect. The next question is how long the EB5 process takes since like the person decide I want to do it until they get their green card.
If it's a person who was born in Canada, since this seminar is for Canadian people originally, I will say that there are certain, I mean, as I mentioned, we have different stages. So the first stage depends on the project. If the project is like in a rural project or certain infrastructure projects, the first stage could be, I had clients in less than a year had the first stage approved. But for regular projects, it can take more years. And then the second stage, it will be between 6 months and 1 year. So I will say anywhere between 18 months to 2 years if we find a specific project that will help us expedite the case. Otherwise, it can take a little bit longer. And if you were born in Canada.
Perfect. So I think we answered all questions. And at this point, I just want to thank everyone for being here. This is our first English webinar. I was kind of nervous, but I think it turned out really good. Again, I want to let everybody know that we offer free consultations. So you can go to our webpage, www.gatherlawfirm.com, and schedule a free consultation. We will love to meet you to know what you want to achieve, and I am pretty sure we can help you with that. Also, we are in all social medias as Gallery Law Firm. If we didn't get the chance to answer your question, you can send us a direct message through Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and we will be more than happy to answer. I just want to say thank you again to everyone that joined us today. We promise we're going to do more English seminars. If you want us to talk about another topics, just let us know. At the end of the year, we're going to bring some special guests to expand more on the E2 visa. We had a lot of questions in this webinar, people asking the E2. It's an excellent option for Canadians, very used, by the way. I think Canada, Diego, is in the top 3 of
Yes.
nationalities that apply more for E2. So we're going to do a webinar focused on E2. We're going to bring some business planners, some corporate attorney to give you the complete information. So, Diego, if you want to thank everyone and say like goodbye for this live and until next time.
Okay, thank you, Joana. So it's been a pleasure being with you today. Sometimes immigration can be difficult. It may sound difficult, but at the end, we make it easy for our clients. And we have clients all around the world, clients from different nationalities, from different parts of the world, coming to different parts to the US. So if you are interested, let us know. We can help you with this type of cases. Don't hesitate to contact us. I mean, we are here to help. It's been an honor. Thank you very much. See you soon. Send us your resume. You can also click in our website and schedule the free consultation if you wish, and we will discuss any doubts that you have or any projects that you have more deeply. So thank you very much for being today with us, and we wish you the best. A lot of success.
A good night and happy rest of the week.
Bye-bye.